If there's one area we know the Atlanta Braves are going to upgrade, it is going to be the outfield. There's absolutely no doubt about it. As you said in the last segment, Adam Duvall cannot be a relied upon starter every day. Eddie Rosario, either. And right now, both of them are. Now, Michael Harris is coming back. We know that. So we need at least one guy. They're probably going to add multiple unless they get a guy that's like, kind of a star. And the one guy to me right now that I think, you talked about the attitude, fits that bill to a T. You talk about a guy who can play every day, fits that bill to a T. You talk about a guy with multiple years of control, which is important because, listen, Ronald Acuna, we do not know what Ronald Acuna could maybe not play in the outfield again in his career.
This is a strange predicament that we should dive into in the future of like this trade deadline potential, because we have a conundrum. Like, we need outfield help this year. We're going to need it next year. Ronald Acuna Jr. probably should be playing in the outfield, but we have Ozuna at the DH. Like, there's a situation that needs to be figured out.
I think the Ozuna thing's definitely something we can talk about, because whether he can even be re-signed, if you're going to I think they're going to do it. But yeah, that's a situation. Like, hey, do you say, hey, Ozuna, lose some weight, you're playing left field next year? Like, I do think that's a conversation if you're the Braves, and you definitely want to bring Ozuna back. There's no question about that, right? He's having the year. He's the ultimate vibes guy. But I think there's a conversation where we say, hey, Ozuna, you need to start working hard on your
acquire good talent and figure it out later. Yeah, is a good.
But I think that's an off-season conversation where you say, hey, we need you to lose some weight because, like, we don't know what's going to happen with Ronald, and we might need you to play at least a few games a week in the outfield. So that's definitely true. But the guy that I was talking about, Randy Arozarena, I'm sure everyone out there that's a baseball fan is very familiar with him. We're talking about one of the greatest postseason hitters in MLB history, and that's not just that's not over exaggerating. I mean, this guy has played in 33 playoff games, has well over 300, I think close to 336 batting average, OPS over 1100, 11 homers in 33 playoff games. Wow. You talk about a guy who shines when the lights are the brightest, it's Randy Arozarena, because he's a good hitter. He's an 800 OPS all-star type hitter during the regular season. During the postseason, he's Barry Bonds. He's one of the best hitters you've ever seen. Yeah. And that's a huge sample size. That's 33 games. Yeah. And we know how hard it is in the postseason. Ask the Braves lineup from a year ago, right? But then you talked about vibes, and like, I don't know if there's a bigger vibes guy in all of baseball than Randy Arozarena. I mean, like, he is the definition of vibes. I mean, you talk about a guy like Marcell Ozuna, Randy Arozarena, like you put those two in the same clubhouse together, you can't have a bad vibe in the room. Like, those guys, it'll just be radiating good vibes, competitive, loose baseball. And I think he fits everything. Now, here's the thing about Arozarena, right? He's also under contract for 2 years. Huge plus. He's having a bad season. Don't think that means he's a buy low candidate. Everybody knows what Randy Arozarena is. He has a track record of success in the regular season, the postseason. I know he's having a bad year, but the vibes, his track record, he is going to demand a lot, especially with 2 more years of control.
Yeah, I was going to say all those things are great. And the reason why they're great, or because the price is going to be so high because of all those things that you mentioned. A couple other guys, George Springer doesn't have that, I don't know the guy, but he doesn't exude that, confidence from a fan perspective. Maybe he does, and I just haven't watched close enough. He is getting up there in age. I think he's 34 or 35. He's got a couple more years on his deal, but the Blue Jays are staring a nasty rebuild right in the face. They're staring down the barrel of hey, we got to do some stuff. So maybe a kind of a deal could, they eat some of that contract maybe, and he won't even if they do eat some of that money, I don't think that he's going to cost an arm and a leg. He's been pretty pitiful this season as a whole, but the last month or so, he's been the George Springer of old. Another guy, very proven in the postseason. I think that when you're the Atlanta Braves, I think, you sacrifice some areas for postseason success, proven postseason success. And George Springer's that guy. Vibes-wise, I don't know. Another vibes guy who's going to be, maybe arguably the hottest position player, Jazz Chisholm. He feels like he's the exact kind of guy that would vibe with the Braves. He's a not such a great season by his standards, but that just feels like he comes to Atlanta and starts playing like Jazz Chisholm again.
Yeah, my thing.
He's going to be expensive. Everybody's going to want Jazz Chisholm, and they're not going to trade him.
Yeah,
Atlanta.
I mean, they trade him to Atlanta. I don't know what the Marlins are doing. They've done stuff like this in the past.
They traded JT Realmuto to
but I also think you also have to take price tag into consideration when you're talking about the Atlanta Braves and their prospect capital. Like, I even think Arozarena is at the very top of what they could possibly offer. But I do think it's doable, and I think the Braves' need is big enough, especially when we talk about vibes, postseason success, and multiple years of control. control. Like he fits all of that. That's why he's my top trade target. But there are a number of guys. I mean, you can look at Brent Rooker up there in Oakland. Not really a defensive guy, but the guy has a 900 OPS. You know who else wasn't a defensive guy when they got him in 2021? Eddie Rosario, Jock Peterson, Jorge Soler.
Yeah.
Like none of those guys were defensive guys. We needed offense, and we said, screw defense. We're gonna just throw Jorge Soler, who was a DH for his entire career. We're like, nah, you're playing left field, buddy. And
are we in a different spot right now?
No, we're in the exact same spot. So that's what I'm saying. Like I don't really care about defense.
No.
Brent Rooker, if he's gonna go out there and hit you 20 home runs in the second half of the season, I don't care if you go out there and make 10 errors. Defense is overrated anyways. It's the most overrated part of baseball. Don't quote me on that. But it is, you know, right? Like seriously, right? Someone tells me Kyle Schwarber is not a valuable player, like War does. Like you go play Kyle Schwarber in the playoffs and tell me he's not valuable.
Yeah.
You know, like when you go play Jorge Soler in the playoffs when he's winning World Series MVP and blasting home runs 450 feet outside Astros Stadium, and ask the Astros if he's valuable in the playoffs, right?
Yeah, Eddie Rosario sucks in the outfit, like sucks, and he won us that World Series practically. He won us that NLCS.
You know, at the end of the day, especially in the playoffs when the games are so close, you need difference making guys that can change the game with one swing of the bat. We talk about it all the time. What's this game about? It's about home runs and strikeouts. You need pitchers that can strike out the other team, and you need guys that can hit home runs. It's really not that hard to comprehend if you're a GM, right? And Brent Rooker is one of those guys. Now, another one of those guys, 3 years of control, having the best season of his career. Oakland, kind of like they're still rebuilding, right? It seems like Oakland's always rebuilding.
Yeah,
so they're always.
It's a perpetual cycle of we produce good players and then we don't pay, and we produce good players and then don't pay.
But still, when you have 3 years left to control this guy, you don't have to deal
no
him
rush
unless you get a king's ransom. And if he is available, you're talking about every single team with outfield help or DH help too, because he's primarily a DH right now, is going to look him. Taylor Ward of the outfield. A little intriguing one is Rengifo from the Angels, because we talk about what do we need? We need outfielders. We're talking about outfielders this segment, but you also need a shortstop, and this guy's the super utility man. He's been playing third base for the Angels. He had 30 games at shortstop last year, only one this year. I'm not expecting to go out there and be a Gold Glover, but could he fill in for Orlando Arcia here? He also is a utility guy that has a little bit of experience, not a ton in the outfield, but again, when you're looking for offensive pop, you're going to have to give a little bit on the defensive end. He's currently injured with a hand injury, but we're talking about getting creative here. Supposedly, I just saw a report right before we came on. Phones are ringing off the hook for him. So that's another guy. He's got one more year of team control that's going to be expensive. But those are kind of my top guys. I just did something. If you want to read more about it, sportstalkatl.com, top 5 outfield trade targets. Those guys are all going to cost a pretty penny outside of probably George Springer, but they all fill Braves needs, not just this year and next year. Now, there's also the possibility the Braves go the 2021 route where they go after guys that you really don't even think of. Like, was anybody thinking about Jorge Soler? Like, I was hitting 160 before
Eddie Rosario was hurt.
Eddie Rosario was hurt and had like a 200 batting average, right? Like, Jock Peterson was about the only one that you expected. And like, even he came a little unexpected because of how early that trade happened. So when you talk about Alex Anthopoulos, I mean, you look at his track record, it's always guys that you're not thinking about, and somehow they end up doing pretty good. So if it's a guy that you never heard of, or I've never heard of, don't get too down.
I'd count on it. I'd really count on it. And one guy that I don't even know how to describe him, a wild card, a polarizing figure to say the least, Tommy Pham. It's a very weird, the guy has all of the things on paper that the Braves are probably looking for. He's an outfielder. He's a vet. He's proven in the postseason. Hell, he, was one of the key figures in that Diamondbacks World Series run last year. And then they didn't re-sign him. And then he didn't get signed the entire offseason. And then he's making pennies on the dollar with the White Sox. And there's rumblings of he's a, prickly person.
Well, he is a prickly person. So the guy's trying to fight William Contreras on the field. He slapped Jock Peterson in the face.
Yeah, so I don't I don't understand.
He's not a prickly person.
Yeah,
he's an asshole.
Yeah, okay.
Let's call a spade a spade.
But maybe the Braves need that. And again, I think when you're talking about the Braves culture, the machine that it is, one cog, one bad apple, I feel so confident in the Braves locker room and culture that I don't think one drop in the bucket is gonna, spoil the entire meal.
Here's a direct quote. Now, not a direct quote, but Alex Anthopoulos has talked about,
Yeah,
targeting guys and asking, former players and stuff, what do you think about this guy? Did you like playing with him? And he said, I don't want to bring anybody that's going to make people uncomfortable. You know how uncomfortable Tommy Pham made Jock Peterson before that game when they were in San Francisco?
He didn't
even want to come out of the dugout. So you talk about a guy who makes people feel uncomfortable, Tommy Pham, because he's out there challenging his own teammates and every player that any player that says the wrong word to him, he wants to fight them. We all know a guy like that, right? Where you're just like, especially when you were growing up, like it's like can't say anything bad to this guy. He might just like
loose cannon, unpredictable.
And you know what? It's not fun to be around him. Even if he's technically your friend,
you're right.
You're kind of like, I don't want to be around this guy because
gotta walk on eggshells
that's
around
something
him.
At 18 years old you usually get over. But Tommy Pham,
33 years, however old he is.
Tommy Pham apparently clearly is not going to. And listen, I think it's clear as day. You read the tea leaves. Why did the Diamondbacks not bring him back after being a postseason hero for pennies on the dollar? Why did no competitive team? And why did he go to the crap hole that is the Chicago White Sox? We talked about this before, but a lot of people mention Tommy Pham. I understand where they're coming from. I just don't see it because I'm reading the tea leaves. I could be completely wrong, but I think, when there's smoke, there's fire. And
generally,
I think there's enough evidence here that suggests Tommy Pham, not the greatest person in the world.